Imagine the silence of a packed stadium suddenly shattered not by a cheer, but by the jagged realization that the two greatest minds in rugby league are no longer playing a game of footy, but a psychological war of survival. For years, the narrative was etched in stone, the master versus the apprentice, the old lion against the rising king. But beneath the surface of the 2021 Grand Final build-up lay a toxic accusation that threatened to dismantle a legacy. We were told Ivan Cleary had crossed a line, that he had manipulated the officials to target the greatest coach of all time, Wayne Bennett, in a desperate bid for glory. The air was thick with the scent of betrayal as the media fueled a fire that suggested Cleary had used backroom politics to sabotage a legend. But what if I told you the truth was far more sinister, a calculated redirection of guilt that left the rugby league world gasping? The accusation wasn't just a headline, it was a weapon of mass distraction designed to mask a deeper truth about power, influence, and the high cost of winning at all costs in the NRL. Before we dive into this web of lies, smash that subscribe button and join the squad. This is All Sports Updates. The rivalry between the Penrith Panthers and the South Sydney Rabbitohs reached a boiling point that transcends mere sport, morphing into a Shakespearean drama where the stakes were nothing less than total historical dominance. At the center of this storm was Ivan Cleary, a man often criticized for being too stoic, suddenly accused of orchestrating a campaign of referee intimidation against the stoic godfather of the game, Wayne Bennett. The accusation suggested that Cleary had publicly questioned the protection of his star son, Nathan, as a smokescreen to influence how the whistle would blow on the game's biggest stage. It was a narrative that painted Ivan as a manipulator, someone willing to sacrifice the integrity of the contest to ensure his family's triumph over the man who had seen it all. Fans were divided, the media was in a frenzy, and for a moment, it felt like the reputation of the Cleary dynasty was hanging by a single, fraying thread as the veteran Bennett played the role of the victim. To understand the gravity of being wrongly accused in this context, one must look at the sheer weight of Wayne Bennett's influence on the Australian sporting landscape over the last 40 years. Bennett is not just a coach, he is an institution, a figure of such immense gravity that to be seen as attacking him is akin to sporting sacrilege in the eyes of the public. When the whispers began that Ivan Cleary was trying to work the refs, it felt like a desperate move from a coach who feared he couldn't beat the master on tactical merit alone. The storytelling in the press was relentless, framing Cleary as the aggressor who was breaking the unwritten code of coaching conduct by bringing the officials into the spotlight. This accusation didn't just target Ivan's tactics, it targeted his character, suggesting he lacked the steel to win fairly. The pressure was mounting, the noise was deafening, and the world waited for the younger Cleary to fold under the immense psychological weight of being the villain in Bennett's final Rabbitohs chapter. However, as the dust began to settle and the internal communications within the NRL started to leak, a much more complex and startling picture began to emerge from the shadows of the boardroom. The accusation that Ivan had wrongly targeted Bennett was revealed to be a masterpiece of projection, a tactical masterstroke by the Bennett camp to put the spotlight on Penrith's complaints before they could even be voiced. It turned out that the manipulation Cleary was accused of was actually a transparent response to legitimate concerns about foul play that had been ignored for weeks. Ivan wasn't trying to cheat the system, he was trying to survive a system that had already been tilted by the veteran coach's decades of media savvy. The shock came when it was realized that the one being accused was actually the one being hunted, a total reversal of the public's perception. The victimhood was a mask, and the accusations were the strings being pulled to ensure that the referees were too scared to penalize the Rabbitohs' aggressive tactics. Love the drama? Drop a comment below with your thoughts. This is All Sports Updates. The emotional toll on the Cleary household during this period was immense, as the father-son dynamic was thrust into the center of a national scandal that questioned their very right to be at the top. Imagine the dinner table conversations where the strategy isn't just about block plays or 40/20 kicks, but about how to handle being the most hated figures in a sport that values the long game above all else. Ivan had to maintain a facade of calm while his professional integrity was being dismantled by a man he had once looked up to with reverence. The beauty of this narrative lies in the resilience of the Penrith system, which refused to break even when the foundation was being rocked by these explosive allegations of referee tampering. It was a test of culture, a trial by fire that would either forge a legendary dynasty or burn it to the ground before it could truly begin. The wrong accusation became the fuel that ignited a fire within the Panthers, a silent vow to answer the noise with absolute, undeniable performance. As the grand final approached, the tension in the air was palpable, a physical weight that every player and fan could feel pressing down on their chests as the teams took the field. The accusations against Ivan were still ringing in the ears of the commentators, but the look in Cleary's eyes was not one of a man who had been caught, but of a man who had been liberated by the truth. He knew that the only way to silence the whispers of Bennett's camp was to execute a game plan so perfect that no official, no matter how influenced, could take it away. The narrative of the wrongly accused coach became a rallying cry for a group of young men from Western Sydney who felt the world was against them. They weren't just playing for a trophy, they were playing to clear their mentor's name and to prove that the new era didn't need to rely on the dark arts of the past to achieve greatness. The stage was set for a confrontation that would redefine the word justice in the NRL. When the final siren wailed and the Panthers emerged victorious, the narrative of the accusation underwent a final, radical transformation in the eyes of the public and the historians of the game. The wrongly accused Ivan Cleary stood on the podium not as a manipulator, but as a survivor of the greatest psychological onslaught the game had ever seen from a rival coach. The realization dawned on the rugby league world that Bennett had used his last ounce of legendary influence to try and rattle a younger rival, and Cleary had stood his ground with a dignity that few gave him credit for. The accusations vanished into the night air, replaced by the cold, hard reality of a premiership ring and a legacy that was now beyond reproach. It was a moment of profound vindication, a silent middle finger to the media cycle that had tried to paint him as a villain. The apprentice hadn't just beaten the master, he had outlasted the master's final, most desperate attempt at a legacy-defining character assassination. In the years following that explosive confrontation, the story of Ivan Cleary being wrongly accused of targeting Wayne Bennett has become a cautionary tale about the power of narrative in professional sports. It serves as a reminder that the loudest voice in the room is not always the one telling the truth, and that legends are often the most capable of bending the reality of a situation to suit their needs. Ivan Cleary's journey from a coach accused of underhand tactics to a four-time premiership winner is a testament to the power of focusing on the process rather than the noise. He proved that you can be wrongly accused, dragged through the mud of national headlines, and still come out on the other side with your head held high and your hands on the trophy. The rivalry between Cleary and Bennett will be remembered not just for the games they won, but for the psychological chess match that pushed the limits of what is acceptable in the pursuit of rugby league immortality. As we look back at that era of the NRL, the image of Ivan and Wayne shaking hands at the end of it all remains one of the most powerful symbols of the game's complexity and its capacity for forgiveness. The accusations were a product of the highest level of competition, a symptom of the desperate desire to win that drives men to do and say things that push the boundaries of sportsmanship. While the world may have briefly believed the worst about Ivan Cleary, the records show a man who led with heart and a team that played with a terrifying level of discipline. The story of the wrongly accused coach is now a chapter in a much larger book of success, a footnote that only adds to the grit and determination of the Penrith Panthers' historic run. We saw the masks fall, the truth emerge, and the crown pass from one generation to the next, leaving us with a story that is as much about human nature as it is about a game of football. Thanks for watching the full story. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell. This is All Sports Updates. Would you like me to create a breakdown of the specific tactics Ivan Cleary used to overcome the psychological pressure from Wayne Bennett during that series?